Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Joining me as always is Mega Jesse. What are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, we got some great stuff lined up for everybody today. We'll be discussing Real ID with the co-founder and president of Citizens Council for Health Freedom, Twila Brase. So lots of good stuff to get into there. There's big issues to discuss on that issue. We'll also be discussing a lawsuit that Elon Musk has taken up against Keith Ellison, our Attorney General, over an anti-free speech law that was pushed by Walter Hudson and plenty of other rhinos. We'll get into that. And then we'll discuss the Soros-backed Mary Moriarty, who is the prosecutor out in Hennepin County, and how she is allowing crime to take place, how she is allowing the destruction of property, including a Tesla, and refusing to bring charges. So plenty of good stuff. I see we already have JL Jass in the comments. So if you guys want to, interrupt, make sure to leave a Rumble rant, and we'll get right to your topic.
I can't believe you don't have a mega head on. Why is it on
I got
the
it
desk?
thrown over here. I wanted to do something a little different.
Is that a protest?
Not at a protest.
protesting?
No, it's not at a protest at all. I just want to show off my hair.
Okay. We're on the dial as always, Mr. Deep State himself. Dawson, how you doing there, buddy?
I'm doing good. Stayed up late. Got a Switch 2 pre-ordered. Life is great. That's all I need.
Oh, my God. And I actually know what he's talking about, which is crazy. We're brought to you today by Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give my good friend Warren a call at 612-419-7453. And if you're buying home, go with the good guys at John Galt Mortgage Company. You can go to johngaltmortgage.com, or you can check them out on Facebook or X, where they've got a top-notch meme game. They're also a damn good mortgage company. And we're brought to you by Alpine Cabtree in St. Cloud, Minnesota. We're going to talk about something that I have talked about since basically 2017, because it became a real big issue in Minnesota. Republicans won a majority in the House and Senate in this state, and their top priority was to pass a national ID system, make us compliant with the national ID system, which is known as Real ID. Okay, I would love for us just to focus on how terrible the Democrats are, which they are, right? And that they're the ones fighting against our privacy, and they're the ones fighting against our liberty. But the problem that I see is it's not just them. It's both it's the Republicans and Democrats. We often call them the uniparty, the people leading these parties, making it a priority to grow and expand government. And this has become a real big issue because, and Dawson, pull up the A1, because just recently we saw a video from Kristi Noem, who's the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, the one that always holds ARs really goofy on the border, telling us that, and by the way, seems to be doing a pretty good job actually stopping the illegal flow of immigration across our border. But now, recycling these failed neocon talking points about how we got to get compliant with the national ID system. Here's Kristi Noem right here.
Kristi Noem, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. If you plan on traveling, we need your help to prevent delays and to prove your identity. Get a Real ID. Starting May 7th, you will need a Real ID to travel by air or to visit federal buildings in the United States. These IDs keep our country safe because they help prevent fraud and they enhance security. Please do your part to protect our country. Go today and don't delay. To learn more, go to dhs.gov/real-ID. Thank you.
Okay, so Jesse, you watched that video. What does that remind you of? Does that remind you of any other video?
No, what's
music and all that stuff? Pull up the A2, Dawson. It hit me. I've seen the same style of video somewhere before by a Republican leader telling us to do something really wrong.
I guessed it.
And that was, Kurt Daudt telling us to go get the COVID vaccine, before like, what was this, like April timeframe, something like that, of 2021, like before most of the evidence was out on the COVID vaccine. Go ahead, play that video there. Just click on that link there, Dawson.
Hello, I'm House Minority Leader Kurt Daudt. There have been a lot of challenges over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, but the vaccines give us hope. The available vaccines are safe and effective. They have been authorized by the FDA and were developed following all federal requirements. Across Minnesota, we are working hard to get as many folks vaccinated as quickly as possible. We are making great progress, and we need to keep that momentum going. I urge you to take your shot today. They are readily available. I took the vaccine, and I hope that you will too. Together, we can finally get back to all of the things that we love.
I should be
Let's get our
laughing at
economy
this.
moving again and get back to life as we knew
Isn't
it.
he culpable
Thank
for
you.
the people that got injured from that vaccine, that he has no idea if it was safe and effective? He was just reading talking points. The same thing with Kristen. No, just reading talking points telling us about more big government. So I thought no better person to bring onto this podcast today than Twila Brase, who I've worked in the trenches against this issue on and some other issues. She was right on COVID, which, by the way, it seems like if you weren't right on COVID, I don't know if I even want to associate with you in politics anymore. But her organization, Citizens Council for Health Freedom, has been big on this issue of Real ID and how bad it is, because they look at it from a healthcare issue, right? Like, essentially, if we've got a national database tracked by an ID card, which is a national ID card, then we're most likely going to be using this to process things with the healthcare industry, and therefore a big invasion of our privacy. Twila, thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Tell people the origins of the Real ID card. I know you love talking about the history of this.
Yeah, so the Real ID came out in 2005, and we didn't hear about it until after that. And as a matter of fact, state legislators didn't hear about it until after that. But the interesting thing, in 2005, on the floor of the U.S. Senate, Republican Senator Lamar Alexander, he called it a national identification card. And he said that we haven't discussed this with Americans, and I'm uncomfortable doing this, and we really need a full debate. Okay. And then Democrat Patty Murray, she said that it hadn't had a vote, it wasn't in conference committee, so she was uncomfortable because of the privacy concerns. And yet, of course, they passed it. And then it was on a tsunami bill, a national defense spending bill. It was the middle of the night, as Senator Limmer would say, or has said on the floor of the Minnesota Senate here when he's been opposing it. So it was passed in the middle of the night. It hadn't gone through traditional procedures at the congressional level. And then in 2008, they put out their first rule telling states to conform. And states stood up and said, no, we're not going to do this. This is a usurpation of states' rights. And otherwise, it's a constitutional violation. And some of them in letters, no, I'm sorry, that wasn't the letters part yet. Anyway, so they passed laws. I believe it's about 20 states that passed laws, and another dozen that passed resolutions opposing or completely stopping the Real ID in their state. And that's sort of where it...
Which was Minnesota, right? Actually, Tim Pelini, I think, it was at 08 or something like that, did this?
It was bipartisan.
Right. Yeah, it was overwhelmingly for.
There was only one person that opposed, that wanted to move forward. So it was nearly unanimous.
By the way, do you know who that person was, just out of curiosity? Because they might still be in.
Sorry, I can't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember.
I'm actually shocked. I would have thought Twila would have got that one. I wasn't putting you on the spot there, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and so anyway, and so that's kind of where it's at until the Obama administration came out and essentially said, you need Real ID to fly. And then the media started saying, you can't fly without Real ID. That was in late 2015. So in 2016, 2017 is when the battle happened in Minnesota. And we were leading the battle in Minnesota against the Real ID. The Chamber of Commerce, unfortunately, they were pushing for it. I believe the business partnership too. Yep. I'm not positively sure, but pretty sure about that one. And then, of all things, the CAE, the American Experiment, testified in support of it.
Oh, I did not remember that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so that was heralded by the Republicans throughout the time, saying, well, the most conservative organization in the state, wants Real ID. And so that was really unfortunate, because that made it very, very difficult. But there were Republican authors, and we would get up at every time and they would say you have to have real ID to fly, and then we'd bring up all the actual documents from the Department of Homeland Security, including the one that said we cannot say that you cannot fly without real ID. This is the rule itself. So then, of course, you have to look at the law. But I'll say more about that in a moment. But anyway, that's how it actually got passed in all 50 states. Is that once that happened with the Obama administration, and once they got the media to pick up on it, the constituents of legislators all across the country got very, very nervous that they wouldn't be able to fly without this thing, and they essentially told the legislators to fix this problem, because we've got, winter homes to go to, summer homes to go to, grandchildren to visit, vacations to have, and we want to make sure that we can fly. Nobody was talking about it like the national idea it is. Nobody was talking about the unconstitutional imposition by the federal government on states. States weren't acting like they were back in 2007, 2008, 2009. They weren't standing up against the federal government. So it was a different time. It was a very unfortunate time, and now, of course, it's a long time since that time. But what we did discover when this new push, so there's this new push started.
The newest deadline, right? Because you've been doing this long enough to see a lot of deadlines come and go.
Yeah, there's been about 6 deadlines, and in a public comment to the TSA, we actually detailed what those deadlines were, just so that they were in the record. But we also found out something else, which we discovered in 2016 and didn't understand, and now we do. And that is that the 5 staff office of the Real ID office at the Department of Homeland Security, after all the states had passed these laws saying, we prohibit all conforming to the Federal Real ID Act. You can't talk about it. You can't move it forward. You can't do anything, right? After all of that happened, this little office at Homeland Security decided that what they could do was work with the DMVs directly. And so the DMVs, according to this report that came out in May 2020, the DMVs started working with this little tiny office. This little tiny office started giving them lots of money, and states were brought up to 95% compliance in many cases, behind the backs of legislators, behind the backs of their governors, and in violation of the law itself. And so we didn't know this, but when Matt, our policy director, and I asked to see the records, I think that was probably in 2016, and we saw all this money, and we knew that there was a law in Minnesota that said, "Thou shalt not." Mm-hmm. And we thought, well, where's all this money coming from, and how can they do this? And now, having Matt found this report in like September of last year. Now we know how they did it, but they did it behind the backs. They did it unlawfully. But anyway, so here we are. In October of last year, they came out with a proposed rule to no longer extend the guideline, sort of. So it says they're not going to change the guideline. They're going to leave it at May 7th of this year. But they're going to have 2 years of progressive enforcement. And so, there was the proposed rule, which we opposed, and there were 63 comments, I think, when we found it in September. And then we had an entire national campaign trying to get all sorts of people to, make comments in opposition. And so there were more than 31,700 comments by 3 weeks later. So, we got a lot of comments all from over the country. And then in January, they come out with the final rule. They say that there were only 11,000.
By the way, when you're saying we're talking about the Department of
Homeland Security.
Okay, got it. So we're referring to the Biden Department of Homeland Security at this point.
That's correct. Yeah, and it's the TSA, which is within the Department of Homeland Security. Right. So yes, it is the Biden's rule. But the fact of the matter is, no matter who put it out, you can't, once it's been finalized, which it was on January 14th, you cannot just say, well, we're going to make our own rule. You have to, Kristi Noem would have to put out a brand new rule. So I think what you need to know is what this rule says. So what this rule says is really, really interesting. It's about 65 pages. And if you go to refuserealid.org, refuserealid.org, that's our special site about this, we have a document called Yes, You Can Fly Without Real ID.
Pull up the A3 there, Dawson. I think is that just redirect to your Citizens Council or CCH Freedom?
It does, but
okay,
it
that's
goes.
what I thought. So I'm going to put it right. Yep, I'm going to put it on the screen right now. You can see it here.
Yeah,
All right, go ahead, Twila.
Page. Yeah, and if you go down, follow that down. Just follow that down a little bit further, and you'll see 3 documents.
Keep going, Dawson, right there.
There you go, right there, right there. Okay, so we got these 3 documents, 7 reasons to repeal Real ID, how to make the switch back. So in Minnesota, you don't have to have a Real ID. You can have a regular standard ID, and that was part of what we got in 2017. So that's one way to thwart what they're doing, is to make sure you stick with a standard driver's license. And if you want to fly, make sure you have a passport. But I've got more to say about the rule. And so yes, you can fly without a Real ID. The first page says why you can fly. It has some quotes and why it's unconstitutional. But the next 5 pages are critical quotes out of the rule, which show you exactly how concerned they are about the idea of putting the hammer down on May 7th. I mean, they say things like, we're delaying for 2 years so that we don't have huge delays at the airport. Or in some cases, there will be non-enforcement for 2 years. Right? And so this is what their final rule says. And when they put out that rule, they said there were only 11,000 comments in. We have the screenshot of more than 30 comments. So it's like, okay. And they didn't answer us as to what they did with all the rest of those comments. But, be that as it may, what we're working with now is this final rule. And what Kristi Noem said in her first video, I think, have maybe her second version.
Oh, did I?
Those are not the words of her first video. In her first video, she said, if you come without a Real ID to the airport, you won't be able to travel.
Which is a lie.
That's not true.
Right.
It's not true in so many ways, because there are a total of 16 different identification documents that you can use to fly. And then we've got the rule, which says why they're actually having a 2-year progressive enforcement time, because they're so afraid of backlash, public backlash against the security agents. I mean, we put some of those quotes in there so you can see that it's 2 years. And but she didn't talk about it that way. So she made it sound like if you don't have it on the 7th, there's no flying for you. And that is not.
What came to my head here, and this obviously Kristi Noem is an extension from what the Biden administration was doing, but why does the Biden administration not want black people to fly? Because we were told black people, minorities, can't get IDs to vote. So do they not want them to fly on commercial airlines?
Okay, I have no answer for that.
I'm giving you crap. Now, I think it's really important to explain what the heck Real ID is. This is a great backstory. Tell people exactly why this is such a problem.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So the Real ID is a national ID. So under our Constitution, the federal government is limited to a certain number of things. And everything outside of that, according to the 10th Amendment, is reserved for the states and for individuals. So in 2017, like 116 representatives from Pennsylvania, all Republicans, wrote a letter to Trump and said, Real ID is a usurpation of states' rights and it's a violation of privacy rights. So this is the federal government taking over identification, travel, and more. And I can explain what the more is, because what the law says is there are certain required uses, and they're called official purposes. And the law says official purposes for which the Real ID is required under this unconstitutional federal law is for access to certain federal buildings, access to nuclear facilities, and access to commercial airlines for flight. But then it adds this phrase, and for any other purposes that the Secretary of Homeland Security shall determine. So the Secretary of Homeland Security, now Kristi Noem, has unilateral authority to, for instance, say that it's required for medical care, it's required for buying a gun, it's required for opening a bank account, whatever it is that the Secretary, and if it's not Kristi Noem, in 4 years, it could be Harris's person.
Yeah,
right?
or just states and municipalities alone could make that ruling, right? Because this is the way I look at it. Once they trap us into a national ID system, then there are many different jurisdictions, including the Department of Homeland Security, determining that it must be used for whether it's healthcare or purchasing gun. I get really concerned about the gun purchases. In fact, if I remember this right, didn't California enforce this? Didn't they say you have to have a real ID to buy a gun in California?
I know that California was looking at, I think it was that possibility. No. A Republican in California was just recently looking at doing a bill, or maybe even pushed a bill to have a real ID to vote.
Of course.
I don't know for sure about the guns. And there could be lots of different things happening at different states that, we're just not totally, aware of every little detail. But the fact of the matter is, yes, I think that could happen. But it really depends on the rules that come out of the federal government, because I can't recall I don't think that the law gives other jurisdictions the ability to say it's required for these other purposes, but the rule might. And the rule has some, I would say, minimum standards. So, for example, there's certain paperwork that's required for you to get a real ID, but it's a minimum. So It says at a minimum this, which means that they could decide that, well, but now we need to know if you're a member of any gun clubs,
right.
And we need to know if you're a member of a church, right? We need to have this kind of documentation because it's only minimal, and so then they could add all sorts of things on top of it. And so the fact of the matter is, it is a national ID card. It does threaten freedom. It's a complete violation of our constitutional rights and of state rights. And some people have said, it doesn't really matter because, they have all our data anyway. Okay, this is really a very limited understanding of what the national ID card is for. Because the national ID card is not just about whether they have data or not. It's how it's going to be used. And so a group called AMVA, the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, which is really sort of like the trade group, you could sort of call it like that, of the DMVs all around the country. And so they testified to Congress on December 5th, 2023, in testimony labeled Beyond the Real ID. And they talked about how their plan is to digitize it, put it on our phones, and have remote access to it. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at what's happening around the country in our state, for example, it was Tapke here who had the digital ID bill. Now, our Matt, killed that here. So we don't have a digital ID bill because of his good work in telling legislators what this actually means, and how every time you pulled out that card, it will ping the DMV, and the DMV will know where you are, what you're doing. Are you at the doctor's office? Are you, buying a gun, at the gun shop or whatever, right?
Right.
And so this is the plan for the DMVs around the country, is that we are essentially going to be setting up a China-like social credit system, not setting up that. I think that's actually the wrong way of saying it. We're enabling that to happen. And depending on what administration would be, in charge, and what they would decide to do, and what new official purposes they would decide to have, that's exactly where that could lead. Digitizing, because by having remote access, that means they can turn it off. They cannot turn off your ID today, right? You got it in your pocket. They'll have to come get you, take it out of your pocket, and force you to surrender it. But with remote access, they can just shut it off. And so everybody has to see that it is about surveillance, but it is more than anything about control, because protecting privacy protects your freedom. Giving them all of this data and all this access and all this remote access, of course, gives them all the control.
Dawson,
So that's really what the national ID is.
Yeah, Dawson, pull up the A7. I had this tweet yesterday. I said, the problem with Republicans getting control and passing the government or big government budgets is that eventually they will be handing that big government back to the Democrats, who have increasingly been more radical and weaponized government agencies. And unless you just are so naive to think that, well, Republicans will win every election from henceforward, which they won't, right? We will have Democrat presidents again. We will have tyrannical type presidents like Joe Biden, who instituted a vaccine mandate on the people of America and infringed on a right to free speech. It's clearly going to happen in the future. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Twila, is whether it's a budget, as that tweet was referencing, or it's a national ID system, this inherently will be used against us in the future. And it's not like we have to just like say this so hypothetically. It's like there was a vaccine passport system set up in Minneapolis. It lasted for like a week. It got so much flack, and luckily we were on that case quickly, but it happened in Minneapolis. And by golly, I would bet there was good talks by the Biden administration to implement something like nationally. They probably just couldn't do it because Real ID wasn't fully implemented at that point. Is that how you see this going?
I see that there are many routes to a digital and national ID, and that the vaccine passport was one way to try to make this happen, but not only here, but have it to be globally. Because when you look at this, when you look at the vaccine passport or you look at digital IDs, what you can see is the word international. And so they're trying to make things to international standards. And I think, they want it for international travel. And so we're really building here an international global net into which everybody's identification. And it's not just, however, people are currently thinking about it, because I haven't even talked about the biometrics part of it.
Oh, God.
Because, people want to know why Health Freedom Organization is leading the charge in this issue, and we are leading the charge in this issue.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of other organizations around the country they've thought it's a done deal, and it can't be a done deal. If we want to be free, it can't be a done deal,
Right.
which is one of the reasons why we're now putting up billboards. And our donors are, funding billboards around the country. Our third one is about to go up, and because it can't be a done deal because we won't be free. So think now about the biometrics. Biometrics are essentially, with how this ID works, it's essentially the government claiming the coordinates of your body for their own purposes. So whether that's a face scan, and the Real ID rules out of the federal government that all the states have passed laws to conform with, all of them require a biometric scan of your face, so that the coordinates of your face, the geometry of your face, is in their database. But the rule says, and other biometrics might be coming in the future. So that could be a palm scan, a fingerprint, an iris scan, a DNA, all of these things, maybe even a voice recognition, voice pattern, anything that they could come up with. The rule, again, it's a minimum. It doesn't have a maximum. So if the federal government decide, what, the face scan isn't enough, we need their fingerprint. And I was just, somebody in this country already has a fingerprint. Because I just read it like a day or two ago, and now I can't remember which state it was, but
They have a fingerprint ID. What are you saying?
Yeah, it's part of it. They've incorporated a fingerprint and the face scan, and so this is not incomprehensible. This is more likely than not. And so, as a health policy organization, we know that it'll be no card, no care. We believe that if you want to everybody to submit to Real ID, you have a new official purpose called healthcare, because there's almost 50% of healthcare spending is done by the government.
By the way, I want to stop you right there. It's not like you're saying something crazy here, because literally in the height of COVID, you had main people on the left talking about if you're not vaccinated, you shouldn't be treated at a hospital. And Real ID would be the thing that shows you are vaccinated. It would have you. I would imagine that's what it's gonna have, is a vaccination schedule.
Well, that could be something that they have as another official purpose. Right now it's just these three things. And Thomas Massey said very presciently, he said, you aren't going to know how they want to use this until everybody has submitted.
Right.
So from our perspective as an organization, everybody must unsubmit who has already submitted. This is really up to the American people now, although I will say that there are about 10 states that are starting to move against this to extract themselves. There are bills in about 10 states of legislators who want to extract their state from the Real ID program. And in Maine, it is Representative Laurel Libby, who's a Republican, but all the co-sponsors of the bill are Democrats. And so her bill was just up. Matt was just testifying by Zoom for that bill in Maine. And so, yes, there's movement done at the state level, but more than anything, it's the people. It's the people who must refuse to submit. They must take their star card. You got a star on your card, you got a Real ID. You must take your star card, go to the DMV and say, yeah, I don't want this anymore. Or you can just say you lost. You can do whatever you want, right? What you want is to get back to a standard state driver's license. And because then you are moving in the opposite direction that they want you to go. You are reversing, right? And so right now they say 44% of all cards are not Real ID compliant. Well, let's make that 46 and 48 and 52 and 55, because the more cards there are that are not compliant, the more it means that they cannot force us into this system.
It's just like masking in public. If we all don't do it, right, they have no power. And that was the thing that bugged me during COVID, is I'd be the one guy showing up to the store without a mask on. It's like, well, then they want to just go after that person. That's essentially what Republicans did when they passed this bill in Minnesota. It's like, they're not going to tell 5.5 million people they can't fly, right? If Minnesota just stood up to the feds and said, we're not going to comply with this, it would be a different story. But now it's just a few of us that refuse to do it. So what you're saying is I see it the same way that, we should all fought COVID, is we just don't comply with it. And there's a mass force of us, which I'm clearly going to be one of these people, and I've resisted up to this point and will continue to resist. Then they're powerless against us. Now you say Real ID compliant. I'm sorry, I'm holding you a little over time here. I asked for 30 minutes. Do you have a little more time, Twila? I want to get into the tech part of it.
I do, but I do want to say about Minnesota, you made it sound like it was a small amount. Minnesota, perhaps because of our work back in 2016, 2017, Minnesota has a fairly low compliance rate. I think it's 40%. And in the state of Maine, it's only like 27%. And there are 45 states that allow you to have a standard driver's license. It is 5 Republican states that don't.
Right.
Texas, Florida, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and Wyoming. And everybody in those states should be complaining and telling their legislators to reverse that law that didn't give them a choice and just put them in the national ID system and didn't tell them and didn't give them a choice.
Well, Twila, this is why I think what you're doing is so important, because, yeah, it's 40% compliance, but we saw during COVID, it depends on the age demographic, but let's just go with the 65 plus. It was like, 95% compliant with getting the first 2 shots of the experimental jab. And it's like, if there's enough fear, people will go and do it. And so to stop that fear, you need organizations like yours telling people, hey, this is bullshit. This is lies. You can still fly without Real ID. And here are the problems with Real ID. Fear goes both ways, right? Here's the fear of your lost privacy. Here's the fear of your lost liberty if you get the Real ID system. I want to talk about the tech part here. So you say, a Real ID compliant ID, it's not just the star. It's got to be some kind of technology. From what I understand, like if you go to like liquor store or some places, they'll swipe your current state issued card, and all that does is shows on the system like the birth date. So what's the technological thing that's implemented right now on the Real ID card, and can that change over time?
So here's two things about this to know. I think I haven't looked to see what the date is that's put in now, but the fact of the matter is whether you have the Real ID Star card or whether you have the standard state driver's license, which has words like this. I think it's not for federal identification purposes.
Right.
Now, different states use different words, but I think those are the ones in Minnesota.
I think that's right.
Either one that you have, both of them, because the state has complied with Real ID, both of them are being done according to the federal government's laws and law and rules. So they're both compliant. However, the one that has the words on cannot be used, and the one that has a star is the one that they want everybody in. And so if there's a difference between them in some kind of tracking, et cetera, I'm not sure of the additional specificity, but once it gets digitized, which is where they want to go, it's endless. It's endless what it can be used for.
There's got to be some technological thing, because a star. Just a star in there seems like that wouldn't be anything, right?
Well, there's other technological things, but no, I mean the star. Well, okay, so there might be something that I don't know. It's entirely possible, and so, but as far as more tracking in it, I don't know that there's more tracking in it. But it is the one that's compliant because it says that you have brought in all of this paperwork that they require, that you have brought in all your primary documents, and they are now housed in the state data system. Anybody who has the standard state driver's license, they don't have all those documents housed in the state.
What documents are those?
So it is, you have to bring your birth certificate, you have to bring your social security card. It's really hard for women. It's really hard for women because if your birth name is different than your married name, or if you've gotten divorced and then remarried, you got to bring all of these. And so there's a lot of women who've given up on getting a Real ID because they're not sure where to find the papers. They don't have enough time to find the papers, right? So some people are talking about it being discriminatory against women, but actually they're being protected. And so the thing that your listeners need to understand is get a path. If here we are, we're leading the charge. Will we be successful? I think we will, because this is about the American people standing up and figuring out how they've been deceived and what this card really is. And we got all sorts of MAGA people and Maha people on X who are just telling people to get in line. It's just no big deal. It's been 20 years in the making. It's going to save us from illegal immigration, and it's all it's voting and all sorts of things. And they're just selling their liberty away.
And the Patriot Act will save us from terrorists, right?
But these are regular people who just believe that this is, going to save us, and they don't understand it's a national ID card, and they haven't put two and two together. And if they're really MAGA people, right, they really want freedom, and this is the opposite of freedom. So I just tell people, if you get nervous and you want to sleep at night, go get yourself a passport and a passport card, which is the same size as an ID. And but just don't get the Real ID.
Yeah.
Get the passport, get the card, don't get the Real ID.
But you'd have to get anyhow if you're going to travel internationally. We got a
$5 Rumble in. G Ballstad says, "Great show, excellent questions and information. Thank you." And I've got a quick question for Twila. I know that in Minnesota we allow illegal immigrants to be getting driver's licenses. Are illegal immigrants also supposed to get this Real ID?
No, because they can't supply the social security number, et cetera. But we have heard that it seems like what would we say, documented or green card folks could get this as well.
Yeah, so that's even worse. It's laws to apply against American citizens and not against illegal immigrants.
When you said MAGA kind of people will excuse it because it's 20 years and stuff like that. And the way I look at this is the long game, and it seems very much like the Chinese model. Like the Chinese play the long game, right? You know, they don't just change things overnight. They are playing the long game. It seems like, which I think this is part of the globalist agenda here. Get a national ID system, probably going to be a global ID system. But it's this long game. It's not going to happen overnight. It might take till the next pandemic where we finally wake up. But do I think you have a much better audience now than when we were doing this back in 2017, 2018, is that we just went through COVID. And a lot of people woke up and they go, oh, crap. Like they literally tried getting us to get a experimental jab. And then they tried actually stopping you from going places with an experimental jab. And oh, by the way, they lied about all those things, right? And we can see this thing. And then you get the Black Mirror kind of thing where it's like the social credit score, which literally China has implemented to some degree. And it's like, that is the direction I see this going. And I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. I don't think it's going to happen May 7th. And I don't think it's going to happen next 5 years. But 10, 15, 20 years down the road, if we let this stuff keep going forward, that's where we end up. And it could be boosted quicker with a pandemic or some global war or some other economic crisis where they, just like how this thing passed in the original point, because I think it was like 2 a.m. this thing got added to revision of the Patriot Act, so 5 or whatever. It's like they're going to use something that scares the population to get us to comply to this.
I was curious about what you were saying, Jake, about there being tech inside of it, and what you were curious what it is. And I have a real ID, and there's
of course, Mr. Deep State's got an ID, a real ID.
Well, I'm not planning on breaking the law anytime soon, so I'm fine. But there's like a thing inside of it.
Was it like a barcode? What is that thing?
No, it must be an RFID chip of some sort, but it's got a cool shape that goes around the whole bottom of it.
There you go.
That's pretty cool.
Do you need that to get on your CIA posts?
No, not as far as I know. We have something different for that.
Did you need that for the Nintendo Switch too?
Thank God I didn't.
Well, yeah, leave it to Dawson to go get the real ID. I would never comply with this thing, Twila, and I do think this is really good work that you guys are doing, because the more people get educated on this kind of stuff and resist, and there's a lot of us that could resist. I think there's a number, like during COVID it came out, it was like 17%. For some reason that's on the top of my head. Maybe I'm just a Q person, right? Isn't Q the 17? I don't remember. But it's like some percentage of the population, when they resist something, it's like a done deal. Like they can't enforce it. I'm totally blanking out what that number was. But it's certainly a certain number of people, when they don't comply with whatever the mandate is, whatever the threat to liberty, the tyrant wannabes have a very difficult time implementing that thing. And so that's why I think this is very important. So what was the website again, Twilight? I went to CCHF Freedom, but you got a special website for this?
It's refuserealid.org. And if you got anybody out there who wants to do a billboard in Minnesota, just, contact us and let us know.
You got a price range on what that would cost if there's got a big donor that wants to do that?
Yeah, it's probably somewhere between $2,500 and $7,000
for a month.
Per month.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah,
and if you've got the website up, I think our billboard is on there.
Put the website back up, Dawson.
I really like our.
No, you guys are doing it right. It's got to be simple. Get a message across, and then if you can bring a website in, just go to the bottom there, Dawson.
Go down.
Right
there.
Go back up.
Oh, you went past it.
Go back up. Nope, right there.
Right there.
Yeah, that's.
Right. And then that little red thing, it says "You can't fly" is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So, we tried to get what we could in there and still have it, look very readable. But that is the message. You can't fly is a lie. There are all sorts of ways to fly. There are many reasons why you should have a passport no matter what. So it would be good to get a passport card at the very same time. Encourage everybody to turn their IDs back in. In Minnesota, we can do it. And 45 states, it can be done. So
you can do it, Dawson. You can turn it back in.
I'm fine with mine.
He's a damn globalist. All right. Hey, thanks so much, Twilight. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. We'll get you eventually, Dawson. You'll see the light. You know what? I was just listening to Joe Rogan. Had Jordan Peterson on again. Actually, it's getting a lot of flack. And
Really?
Joe Rogan's really come.
Did they address Candace Owens?
I don't know. I've only listened an hour, but because I left, and Joe Rogan has come around on the climate scam.
Really?
Yeah, like because I remember like
He pushed back on Candace Owens on it.
who did?
Rogan.
Oh, when he had her on?
Yeah,
Oh,
years
that was
ago.
probably- years ago. Yeah. He used to be more bought into it. I've seen like a slow, transition into thinking that, it's kind of sketchy. But like when he was talking with Jordan Peterson, it sounded like Joe Rogan has been completely red-pilled on that. We'll get Dawson there someday. Someday we'll get you, Dawson.
Keep trying. I'm pretty stubborn.
Yeah, you are pretty stubborn. All right. That was really interesting. Very informative. I want to share a story. I thought I saw something in the comment section, and maybe I've shared this on the show before. Pull up, Dawson, real quick, the A5. Because this was a battle in 2017. This is an article from February 23rd, 2017. You have to understand, on the heels of Trump's enormous victory in 2016, November 2016, where he almost won Minnesota, by the way. It was like 1.5 points away from being Hillary Clinton. Republicans took back the House and the Senate, okay? Actually, I think they already had the House at that point, but they won the House back, and they took the Minnesota Senate. Paul Gazelka became the leader. David Hand actually didn't get reelected, and so they picked a new leader, and it's Paul Gazelka, all right? So our leaders in the Minnesota House and Senate were Paul Gazelka and that guy Kurt Daudt. We don't talk about him much anymore these days because he's off being a full-time lobbyist instead of a part-time lobbyist. Their number one priority, Republicans, was not shrinking government, wasn't passing constitutional carry, stand your ground, outlawing abortion. That wasn't their top priority. Their number one priority, it wasn't even giving back the surplus. They didn't actually give back the surplus, not a dime of it. Their number one priority was to pass the National ID Compliance Act in Minnesota, despite the base being very much against it. Twila, Citizens Council for Health Freedom, Action for Liberty. I remember CD2 and CD7 Republicans passed resolutions against Real ID, and they went ahead and spent all their political capital on passing Real ID in Minnesota. And I mean, basically gave that big bargaining chip away where like we could call the feds on their own, like go, they're not going to stop 5.5 million people from flying. And so I don't remember if I shared the story, but the way they did it was just so corrupt. The Republican establishment went to its members, and the first committee in 2017 was the Data Practices Committee in the Minnesota House. And there were two people in there, Cindy Pugh and Eric Lucero in the Republican majority, that were against Real ID on principle. And they wouldn't budge. They wouldn't budge on that issue. However, somebody from the Republican establishment went and talked to Eric Lucero. I assume this happened to Cindy Pugh. I know it happened to Lucero because I talked to Lucero about this. And he'll be embarrassed that I bring up this story, but screw you, you're a big pussy. Because I went to talk to Lucero because he left he didn't even show up to the committee hearing because he was told to take a walk. That's a terminology at the Capitol for don't show up and vote your conscience. Just abstain. Just leave. Don't even show up to the committee. So he left and didn't show up to the committee. Cindy Pugh didn't either, and it passed by a vote. It would have died in that committee if Lucero would have showed up. So I went to Lucero's room, to his office, I think the next day, and I asked him, what the hell? He closed the door and he goes, you got to understand. They came to me and they said, we're going to take you off your committees if you show up and vote. I was like, well, why don't you go tell the media that? Why don't you go tell the American people that kind of corruption and threats are happening up at the Capitol for a bill that you're against? He goes, oh, Jake, you don't understand. They'll never hear any of my legislation. I'll never get anything passed. I'm like, well, then you're just useless at that point. That's how they got Real ID passed in Minnesota. Didn't we just talk about this on the show? There's like real rhinos in Minnesota. I mean, they literally are Democrats. They're just like running as Republicans. Then you got a lot of parts of the establishment that they're doing it for self-preservation. And then you got the fence sitters, and those fence sitters are the biggest weaklings on the planet. Does anyone think Eric Lucero is not a conservative? Of course he is. He's just a weakling, like most of these people. I hope he watches this because, yeah, Eric, I lost all my respect for you that day when you told me that. It's really sad. All right, let's move on to the next topic here. We got Elon Musk suing Keith Ellison. What is going on here?
Yeah, Dawson, go ahead and pull up the B1. We've got an article on actionforliberty.com. This is not published on the site yet, so you guys are going to be the first ones to be able to view this. But Elon Musk is suing Antifa Keith Ellison over anti-free speech law push by Walter Hudson. The Trump administration leader of Doge, Elon Musk's company, X Corporation, has announced a new lawsuit against Antifa Keith Ellison's AG office over an anti-free speech law that puts Minnesota citizens in prison for creating or sharing political AI memes. This unconstitutional idea was put into law by Democrats and rhinos alike, notably led by unhinged establishment state representative Walter Hudson. HF 1370 was passed in 2023. This bill covers two topics for AI usage, one of which was a largely uncontroversial law outlawing the use of deepfake technology for pornographic uses. The other section attached to this bill was to send Minnesotans to prison for up to 5 years and or face a fine of up to $10,000 for creating or sharing AI memes that are intended to, quote, injure a candidate or, quote, influence the result of an election. Action for Liberty reported on this bill in 2023 and was the only major organization within our state that sounded the alarm. See section of the bill below. And the highlighted section there is the part that shows that you could go to prison for up to 5 years due to this bill. This bill initially started off as a Democrat bill led by radical leftist Zach Stevenson, but establishment puppet Walter Hudson crossed over and added his name as an author on March 9th. Instead of championing Action for Liberty's Never Again bill, like Walter should have done as previous chief author in the House, he instead chose to pick a fight against free speech alongside the Democrats. How egotistical and power-hungry are politicians if they cannot handle memes against themselves? At one point, Democrats attempted to add HF 1370 into another Democrat bill, and Walter removed his name from the legislation. However, Democrats ultimately chose to pass the bill in its original form, and when that was decided, Walter Hudson was back on board. During debate on this bill on 3/30/23, Hudson took time to praise Democrat Zach Stevenson for the, quote, proactive nature of the bill, and even stated that the bill shows the, quote, type of thinking that we have to be able to do and willing to do, end quote. He also said the implementation may be, quote, a little sloppy, but says, that's okay, we'll figure it out. That sounds like some big government anti-freedom talk. Dawson, let's go ahead and click the C video here. I would like people to be able to hear it from Walter himself, so we can go directly to that, and it should be timestamped in the right location. Yep.
1830. I recognize the member from Wright, Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Representative Stevenson, for bringing this bill. It seems like every time I get up to address something you've said or done, I'm praising it. I hope to be able to continue that. But in this case, specifically what I want to point out is that this is an example of proactive legislation. And very often what we do, not just in this chamber, but in legislative chambers across the country, is react to problems. And we're at a point in our history where technological developments are increasing at an ever more rapid pace. And this is the type of thinking that we have to be able to do and willing to do, to ask questions about, well, where is this going, and what kind of problems is it going to create, and how do we get out ahead of it? And that's what this bill does. And so that's why I rise in support of it. And, you know, just to speak to the concerns that have been raised by my colleagues over on this side, I get it. Absolutely. We want to have bright lines, and it can be difficult when you're dealing with an emergent technology and having to discern where the intersections of different interests lie. But this is a step in the right direction, and maybe it'll get a little sloppy in its implementation. That's okay.
That's okay. Sending people to prison is okay.
Maybe you should opt on not passing laws then in that regard. Jeez.
Right. It's insane. I see we got a $5 Rumble Rand from O'Bannon says, let me guess, the intellectual giant Wednesday Walter Hudson is going to bloviate on how he is right and how Elon is actually wrong. On Wednesday, he thinks he is smarter than an actual rocket scientist. I guess we'll have to see what Walter Hudson's take is going to be on this now. It's absolutely ridiculous that he was a part of this. So this, you know, you heard it right there from his own mouth. where he says that the implementation of something tyrannical like this is going to be a little sloppy, but that's okay. We'll figure it out because we all trust the government to be able to figure out, concerns on free speech and on artificial intelligence memes. That's what we're talking about.
We really
AI
trust
memes.
those left-wing prosecutors to figure it out, don't we?
Right. And so it's clear that Walter's attempts to calm down any of the Republican opposition was successful, which allowed an out-of-control, socialist, anti-freedom attorney general office to lock up Minnesotans for memes. This bill was passed unanimously by rhinos and Democrats in the state house, and only one state senator had the guts to vote against it, Senator Nathan Wiesenberg. The Uniparty was in action to limit free speech and pathetically protect themselves from memes. Elon Musk acquired X, then Twitter, with the goal of creating a free speech social media platform. Despite Hudson's debilitating addiction to X, where he wastes hours of his day each day, Walter Hudson clearly doesn't align with the pro-First Amendment attitude of Elon Musk. Along with trying to giving AI memes leading to prison time, Unhinged Walter has also called for the MNGOP to purge grassroots A4L supporters from the party and fought to censor the grassroots opponent to globalist rhino Tom Emmer at the CD6 convention, which was Chris Corey. Action for Liberty previously reported that rhino Mary Franzen of 12B previously took on a lawsuit on this issue despite her voting in favor of the bill and her complete silence during the two floor debates on 3/30/23 and 5/16/23.
You got a rumble around here.
Yep, $5 from O'Bannon says, Wednesday Walter is getting kind of chubby. I wonder if his health insurance plan includes Ozempic. That's something to find out maybe. So Mary Franzen, despite her suing on this, she was completely silent on the two floor debates. So it shows that she wasn't actually serious about this. When she has now seen the light, she says that she should have never voted for this unconstitutional garbage in the first place. Her explanation is that I support the pornography section, but not the political section. Well, really, I guess we could find you on the floor saying that. Nope, she didn't say anything.
Go on, just one second. Click on the AFRL previously reported.
Yeah, I'm actually going to get to that in a second here.
Well, I know, but I can't remember what the headline was, but I can think of the headline. It should be Clown Rhino Representative Mary Franzen sues against anti-free speech bill that she voted for.
Yeah, and actually go ahead and scroll down a little bit on that, Dawson.
It's so crazy. You can't make this stuff up. She's literally suing over the bill she voted for. Yeah, there it is. She voted.
Right.
And there wasn't a single nay vote in the Minnesota House.
And go ahead and scroll down a little bit, too. There's too much information to be able to put into the current article. Oh, you know what? I don't know if I got in that one. I'll have to find it in a second.
Oh,
here.
by the way, yeah, while Alpha News writes up a puff piece on Franzen, that was just, there's a lot of things that I think upset me about Alpha News these days, but it was like a puff piece on her, like, good job taking on the Ellison on this bad bill. It's like, I think they did address that she voted for it,
right.
But I was thinking, like, hey, maybe the one person you should talk to is, like, the legislator, Nate Wiesenberg, who didn't vote for it. Like, the only one in the whole legislature.
Alpha News didn't even include his name in the article. So
like the one no vote in the whole state.
Right. And so on that lawsuit, interestingly, Ellison's AI expert ended up using phony pretend citations generated by AI in the testimony to the court. The irony of the expert falling prey to AI's dangers while writing to the court about AI's dangers was not lost on the U.S. District Court Judge Laura Provenzino. So I've got that linked in there. Once we publish, people can be able to check that out for
what's
themselves.
This all about? So they weren't trying to make a case in that? Like they literally screwed up? I don't know.
The expert was using ChatGPT to create his arguments, and the AI used two citations that were not based in reality and were not real citations.
Kidding me.
And yeah, so
sometimes things just seem too good to be true, but like I said, you literally had a legislator suing over a bill she voted for. Like, can't make this stuff up.
AI and new tech like that seems to make all these people's brains malfunction a little bit.
Yeah. All right, sorry. Continue on. There's so much commentary on your piece, Jesse. This is great. By the way, I'm just dying laughing. On you and Walter are just so funny. I wish he would come on and debate you, but we know that will never happen. Well, maybe it will happen at the end of summer.
Right. Yeah, we'll see about that.
No, it's not
but Elon Musk's lawsuit will be much higher profile than, obviously, Mary Franzen's, and could save our state from the uniparty tyranny and attacks And the lawsuit attacks the law using the First and Fourth Amendments of the U.S. Bill of Rights. However, keep in mind that Action for Liberty reporting recently exposed that Rhino Jim Nash is pushing to increase Antifa Keith Ellison's Attorney General budget right now in the state government finance and policy bill by over $3 million this year. Jim Nash and the other rhinos who will support this bill will be giving Ellison more money to fight free speech and other frivolous cases like his recent anti-gun case that the Supreme Court refused to hear. Last year, Democrats added even more provisions to this law, including that a candidate would be disqualified from office if they broke this law. So it just shows how tyrannical these people are really getting. Action for Liberty will continue to be the bulldog for freedom in our state. We will never concede an inch on our constitutional God-given rights. Action for Liberty would much rather defend the free speech rights of Minnesota citizens instead of defending the feelings of insecure tyrant politicians. The next time you see Minnesota rhinos mask themselves with Elon and Doge, remember that Elon has to spend his money suing Keith Ellison thanks to them, especially unhinged Walter Hudson. A full copy of the lawsuit can be found in a Fox 9 article. This is a key lawsuit that I'm very glad that Elon Musk is showing interest in the state of Minnesota. I know that he had taken up some lawsuits on the same issue with California and some other places, and I remember thinking, well, when is he going to get around to Minnesota, because we've got the same crap going on? And sure enough, he has, and this is a uniparty issue. You heard it for you heard it for yourself when Walter was defending that on the floor. He was saying that the implementation might be a little sloppy, but that's okay. No, it's not. Any kind of challenge against free speech is a threat everywhere. For Walter or anybody else to ever try to claim to be a constitutionalist ever again is a complete joke. These people are not for freedom. They want to, and this is, like I said, it just shows how pathetic these people are.
So I'm a little bit curious where your guys' thoughts are on the AI stuff itself.
We actually agree on this bill, though, right? Like you're against it too.
So I'm against it for it needs to be cleaner. Walter says it's sloppy, but it can't be, because I see the dangers. I don't see the dangers with making Walter Hudson like a picture of him, whatever, selling mirrors in his underwear. Okay, that's one thing. But using AI,
what a completely random thing for you to create in your mind.
Just off the top of my head.
Yeah, just off the top of your head. By the way, just so you know, I agree there's dangers in it. Just like what the left keeps talking about with the dangers of misinformation. There's dangers of misinformation. The problem is you can't trample on people's right to free speech.
I was messing around with, so we went to NAB, right? And Da Vinci Blackmagic, they have now an AI voice generation system, and I was testing it out. And that thing can be very, you can misuse that to no ends. I imagine you could copy your voice, and then someone could just have you say a bunch of incriminating stuff that's actually criminal, right? And they can post it and call it a leaked audio or whatever.
Yeah, but the thing that Elon argues, if you read it, or his lawyers are arguing, is that they've already got a solution for this on the X platform. It's community notes. Right? You could say all day long you got this leaked audio, but community notes with enough people inputting in it say this is not correct, this is not an actual statement.
Maybe, but then the problem is, for example, that AI generated video that came out about the guy that was molested by Governor Walz, right? Back in the election time, where Jesse was saying, well, it's out there. Yes, it's out there. And a lot of people are going to see that, and they're just going to be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, there's a problem with misinformation. The issue is government can't try to enforce misinformation. It is a Wild West. It's this is the thing about a free society. It's not like a free society. The left tries to talk like there's some nirvana somewhere, like socialism, some nirvana. There's no nirvana. There's no utopia, right? We'll never have it. Even in a free society, bad things will happen. The problem is we just don't want government enforcing things, because there's the beauty of a free society is that essentially the marketplace determines things, right? Your dollar is a vote, right? When government comes in, there's no incentive by profit. There's no incentive by performing well as a company. There's no incentive on correct, on the platform of X, figuring out a way to find out what's misinformation, what's not. There's no incentive like that. Government knows best, and what's government's track record? Terrible. It's awful.
Right.
It's absolutely terrible.
This bill is extremely broad. The fact that it says that anyone that could injure a candidate or influence an election, it shows that this is only going to be mostly one side. When you got Keith Ellison as the guy who is going to be implementing this law, you can't trust the government no matter who's in power, especially when you got a socialist who wants to eliminate free speech. It's insane that the Republicans were all willing to go along with it except for Wiesenberg, and I think that Walter Hudson was the reason that he got them to drop their guard. Dawson, if we could pull up the B2. I wasn't able to include all of this information within.
Did you hear Walter was talking about in that speech that people on his side of the aisle were complaining about it, but none of them voted against it?
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? There's this infamous one with Kurt Daudt. The only person to vote against the Southwest Light Rail audit was Eric Mortensen, and he didn't vote for it because two reasons. First of all, he made a promise not to spend a dime of the surplus money, and so that was like $200,000 robbed from our surplus money. Another reason was it was a completely useless audit. It wasn't going to accomplish anything. It wasn't going to stop the project from going forward. And you don't have to take Mortensen's word for it. That's literally what Kurt Daudt said on the House floor. And there's this infamous speech where he goes, "This is not going to do anything. This is not going to stop the project from going for it. With that being said, I support this bill." It's like, what? Yeah. You just, like, it's so phony up there. It's WWE scripted shit until you get people that come along. They're like, "Hey, I'm not playing that game anymore." I'm sorry. Sorry, Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, Dawson, go ahead and pull up the B2. Because, yeah, there's a lot of information surrounding this idea. Go ahead and, this was the original reporting of Action for Liberty when it first, when this bill first dropped. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit more.
Well, that happened. No, I'm kidding.
All right, yeah, right there is where I want to talk here. So the representative sat back and had some laughs at deepfake images of current or former state legislators, seeing the absurdity in some cases. New Brindley certainly had a love and affection for a literature piece that Democrats created, which was Brad Tabke, depicting Liberty champion Eric Mortensen as the village idiot of the Capitol. Nasty New Brindley suggested that there is no issue with the image because it's, quote, accurate and true. The unanimous vote and laughter from the chamber, and I could tell you, watching some of those rhinos sit back and laugh, it shows exactly who they are, and it shows that the chamber, it's one big dog and pony show for all these clowns. The real truth is that rhinos like Ann New Brindley would rather have a GOP minority than a GOP majority with Eric Mortensen in it. The upside is that he still lives rent-free in these rhinos' heads. And obviously we know that they want Brad Tabke to be in there. They all voted except for Tom DePel and Drew Roach to allow Brad Tabke to be seated despite all of the massive election fraud. So this is a uniparty problem. Both the rhinos and the Democrats are on board with these kinds of things. And all they want to do is protect themselves from memes and stifle free speech, try to throw Minnesotans in prison. And it's not even just if you share, it's not even just if you create this thing. You could get in trouble for sharing this as well. And they want to get Elon Musk and other social media platforms to be able to take this stuff down. That's not their responsibility. We live in a free country. We have to make up our own minds. We have to disseminate information for ourselves. We do not need an untrustworthy government interfering in that process.
If there's a guy who, say, some liberal who sits in his basement all day just generating AI audio clips of Trump saying vile stuff, of Elon Musk saying vile stuff, blah, 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 just go down the list.
There's plenty of AI
people
going on already.
So should that be, like, how do you stifle
legal.
that?
It's legal.
I mean, it has to be speech. I mean, I guess.
Is that free speech? It seems like libel or some kind of slander or something along those lines.
It's hard to slander a public official.
And most AI, you can figure out it's AI.
That doesn't matter.
What's that?
That doesn't matter because you'll have old people that fall for it no matter what, and voters.
Well, right?
Okay, but that's not our responsibility. I mean, people can fall for anything, so we can't police the ideas and memes that you're allowed to share just because old people might believe it. I mean,
should scamming be legal? Like, should you be allowed to tell an old person?
Well, steal someone's money.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you're referring to in a scam, most of what are considered scams are actually prosecutable. It's criminal code.
So, like, someone selling my grandma, or saying, go to the store and buy gift cards and then send them to me.
So it'd be
that's
like
their free
defrauding
speech.
somebody,
well,
right?
That's their free speech.
Yeah,
so
no.
Why not?
You seem like you're referring to like defrauding somebody. That's part of criminal code. Can't do that.
So then, isn't slander or libel also criminal code type stuff?
No, that's civil code.
Civil code. Okay, I see the difference.
And by the way, it's very hard to win a civil case in slander when you're a public official. For good reasons.
I don't think that changes much.
You know, slandering Tim Walz, right? Like, Tim Walz it's all someone's perspective, right?
Well,
you could call Tim Walz a lying cheat.
Yeah.
It's hard for someone to be civilly liable for saying that because he is a public official. He's a politician.
Is that the same
now,
thing?
If you call somebody that lives a private life, who runs a reputable business in your community, a lying cheat, and you go around town doing that, there might be a case for slander.
Does that same thing happen with that guy who generated the footage of the kid or the man saying that Tim Walz touched him as a kid? Because that seems more like a big deal than just saying like he's a lying cheat. That seems like, well, you're trying to like make a serious claim that.
Yeah, I mean maybe that could be civilly. Like could be found civilly liable on something like that.
It's totally new ground that these people need to be smarter on. Like,
but we're not talking about civil code. We're talking about criminal code. That's the problem, and the government needs to stay out of the free speech area. And it's obviously a big thing. The left's doing this overwhelmingly these days.
I suppose. Would you call that a meme? Is the Governor Walz pedophile guy talking about it? AI generated thing?
It's funny. Memes becoming more than I think what meme is supposed to be. Isn't a meme just supposed to be like a graphical joke?
That's what I would think. I think
modern day comics.
I think that's pretty crazy stretch to call that kind of thing a meme.
Yeah, it's like AI generated stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just think it's a very scary area to go down, and it's not all hypothetical because the guy in New York was basically put in jail because he created a graphic that said, wasn't it like vote for Hillary or text your vote in for Hillary or something like that?
Yeah, for the day after the election or something, right? Yeah.
Is this bill still like active? Is this still a law in Minnesota?
That is a law. Now, obviously, it's being contested in court, and there could be an injunction that's, well, I assume it's been implemented. I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the effective date.
So then here's what we need to do. We need to come up with some good memes that can hurt a politician, whatever they're talking about, and then I need to Photoshop them using zero AI, record the process, and have them say, hey, that's AI of me. I'm arresting you. And I'm like, no, here's the video of me making it with my bare hands on Photoshop, and see what happens.
Have you seen the first episode of Black Mirror this year?
I really need to.
Oh, okay.
I need to watch it. Yeah, don't spoil it.
You need to watch. I won't say more. All right, let's go to the last issue. Mary Moriarty. I don't know why I can't say her name, but it doesn't matter. This Soros-backed DA. Sorry, Hennepin County prosecutor. I always call her DA. She's actually a county prosecutor, an elected official. This is how lost they are in Hennepin County, which, if you're not from Minnesota, this is Minneapolis, essentially. Pull up C1. This is from Fox News. Soros, I love the headline. Soros prosecute ripped for failing to charge wall staffer over Tesla vandalism. Two-tier justice system. We didn't even get a chance to talk about this on Tuesday, but this is a huge story in Minnesota. A Minnesota state employee who works for the Governor Walz's administration, or I guess one of it was a Department of Transportation or something like that. He works for for Governor Walz's department. Oh no, it's Department of Human Services. Sorry. So a Minnesota state employee avoided criminal charges after vandalizing at least 6 Tesla vehicles, the local district attorney announced this week, prompting outrage from local leaders who spoke to Fox News Digital. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office said it would seek diversion over charges against Minnesota Department of Human Services data analyst Dylan Brian Adams. You guys know who Brian Adams is, don't you?
Sounds familiar.
He's a famous singer from like the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, had like a lot of hits, a lot of good songs, and yeah, I guess he must have got his middle name from that. Dylan Brian Adams, after causing $20,000 in damages, the diversion approach helps to, quote, helps to ensure the individual keeps their job and can pay restitution, according to Hennepin County Attorney's Office. When reached for comment by Fox News Digital, the Minnesota Department of Human Services did not clarify Adams' employment status, but said, quote, we are reviewing the matter at this time. State employees are expected to follow our code of conduct and conduct themselves to the highest ethical standards through their word and actions. Okay, let's go to So this obviously got a lot of buzz in Minnesota, especially from conservative ranks. This is Mary Moriarty, she's on the C2 Dawson. She's explaining why she's not charging. By the way, before we get to this, diversion is explained. Go to C3. They explain it here on Hennepin County's website. I'm not a lawyer. I guess I just don't remember this term before. Maybe I've heard it before. So this is what it means. Adult diversion. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office recognizes that there are times when public safety is best served by diverting first-time offenders from the criminal justice system. Adult diversion programs refer these offenders to social services, chemical dependency, or mental health resources. First-time offenders are closely monitored to make sure they meet program expectations. Now, you know what? I actually kind of somewhat like this idea of this program when it comes to like people found in possession of marijuana or some drugs, right? Because I've long argued what a stupid thing for us to lock somebody up in jail who's addicted to drugs. That is like the dumbest idea on the planet. I'd rather see them, get chemical dependency like rehabilitation. So this program, just by the way it reads, sounds like it's for those people, not people purposely vandalizing to the tune of $20,000 in property damage multiple times, which some would argue was politically motivated. Like domestic terrorism, isn't that what terrorism is? Like politically motivated crime? That's essentially terrorism's definition. So it's like domestic terrorism, what this guy was doing to Teslas. To the tune of $20,000, felony acts. And he's not even going to be prosecuted, because that's what diversion is. We're not going to go through the criminal prosecution process. Instead, we're going to do this little program on the side, which makes sense for someone that lights up a joint. It doesn't make sense for this. Okay, now let's hear what Mary Moriarty says in a press conference. By the way, a press conference on free gun locks. You can see her standing there with Moms Demand Action, a bunch of gun control people. This person, Mary Moriarty, is even hated by many Democrats. That's how far crazy left she is. By the way, prosecuting
she said that Walz was a sexist homophobe.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and Ellison.
She might be right sometimes. Clock's right twice a day, right? A broken clock's right twice a day. All right, let's go ahead and hear. Like, this is not about this case, but our lazy media actually kind of asked a question that was kind of tough. Kind of. Let's go ahead and hear this. Do we not have...
Yeah, I'm not getting audio.
I was going to say...
I'm not getting audio.
Last time it was me not plugged in, but I don't think anyone's getting the audio here.
I'm not getting it either.
What is going on? Why do we not have the audio?
It was working a minute ago.
Okay, let me do my voice impersonation.
Let me just...
By the way, you see how...
Okay,
no sound there.
None of it's working.
Now, what is going on? Our whole browser's not working?
There we go. Ready?
Yep.
I have an off-topic question. A lot of people are trying to figure out why you decided not to handle the alleged Tesla vandal the way you did. Many people just can't seem to understand why there are not more severe consequences for the action.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I think it's important that accurate information be out there. So we are and always have been focused on public safety. And if you look at the data on recidivism, in other words, when people come through the system, how often do they come back? If they go through the traditional system and they have a felony conviction on their record, they are much more likely to come back and commit a new crime. That is because a felony conviction destabilizes their lives. They may lose their job, lose their housing, and it can just lead to future criminal activity. What does work, and the recidivism rates are much, much lower, is diversion. And that's been proven over and over here and throughout the country. So diversion is accountability. The case was submitted to us by the police. We did not decline it. We looked at the case. What we really wanted was for the victims in that case to get restitution and for this person to be held accountable. We are accomplishing both of those by requiring him to go through a diversion program and to pay restitution to all 6 victims. What happened to those victims of those Teslas should not have happened. And just like any other property offense, which is one of the lowest level offenses that we have, we seek to hold people accountable in a way that will be consistent with public safety. And diversion is a proven way of doing that.
Does this depart from standard practice? Because a lot of people are charged with felonies for committing felony crimes.
We rely on diversion a lot in our office because we are very focused on public safety. And as I said, if you really care about public safety, you are trying to figure out how do we make the victim whole, which we can do here by making sure that they get restitution. How do you hold the person who did this accountable for keying the cars? We're doing that. He's going to go through programming. But how do you do that in a way that is less likely to make the person come back and commit a new crime? So we are very much focused on public safety. Now, if there are people, there are some people who want people to have felony convictions. That's fine if that's what they want, but that is not about public safety. Making sure you hold people accountable for their actions, which we're doing here, making the victims whole, they are going to get restitution, is a way to hold somebody accountable, make the victims whole, and lessen the likelihood that the person comes back into the system.
Now here's the deal that I have. Maybe there's truth to the person's less likely to repeat, which I don't know if I buy that in what she's saying. I could see that in some other charges, and I'll explain why I think this is different in this case. But that neglects the fact that other people, seeing that that person's not prosecuted, will probably commit similar acts, right? Like, she's ignoring the whole societal impact of other potential criminals seeing, oh, I could get away with it. Here's where it just really becomes obvious to me. Before I got to office, I was quickly going to try to grab an article of clothing that I wanted to get. And I went to a store right here in Roseville. Now, we're not in Hennepin County, but I'm just going to go on a limb and say Ramsey County's probably not even worse than Hennepin County, but let's just assume stores in both are about the same. Is that a fair assessment? Whatever crime is in this area is definitely going on over in Hennepin County. So I go in the store, and, of course, like many retail stores, you can't find a worker to save your life. And the item of clothing I wanted was on like a big long wire that was basically a security device, because people are ripping off clothes and running out of stores and then selling them in whatever market. And I look around, and every rack, this is happening. So essentially all the clothes in the store are on this thing, and you can't find it. I was like, I'm not even gonna bother. I'm leaving because I don't want to go find someone, and they got to get a key. Then it's like, oh my God, what a incredible inconvenience. Well, the problem is this is an issue in Ramsey County. I gotta imagine it's the same in Hennepin County. I don't go to Hennepin County as much, but it's a big issue because there's really no consequences for retail theft at a very low value. What stealing a rack of clothes is probably under $1,000. So there's no incentive for people not to do it. And that's what I see as the problem here is, hey, if I can scratch 6 Teslas, create $20,000 worth of damage, and I don't even get criminally prosecuted, like what? Why? Maybe I'll do it too, because it's for the cause. We need to tell the Trump administration and the guy running the shot, Elon Musk, we got to really stick it to him. So like that's a bigger problem, I think, beyond just the singular case. Now, in the singular case, there's 6 victims. I think there's 6 victims, at least we know of. 6 different Tesla owners, $20,000 worth of damage. I think all of them probably amount to felony charges, but certainly they would easily, they make a further stretch on felony charges for President Trump than they could make for this guy. And he gets out. By the way, I didn't even think of that. You prosecute a president, the leading presidential candidate, for crap, for absolute crap. You put 2 misdemeanors and they don't even have to be all agreed on by a jury to make a felony, to boost it up to a felony. And that's what you prosecute him on and get him now the president's a felon, right? And meanwhile, this guy literally, I mean, they got him probably dead to rights on here. It sounds like it was good police work. And then,
right.
sounds
essentially, like the police are upset about this too. Even the
and
Star
that's the
Tribune,
other societal impact.
Right,
yeah,
the
police
Minneapolis
morale.
police are not happy about this. Even the Star Tribune has gone off on it. And this diversion program is only meant to be for property crimes of less than $5,000. As you just said, this is $21,000. So, he shouldn't even be allowed to be going through this diversion program anyway.
But you could see, like, if someone was caught smoking a joint, which I don't think is, it's not illegal now, right? But smoking crack in public, something like that, I could see a diversion making sense, right? It's probably not doing the best thing to throw this guy in prison. Or, jail. But in this case, it just absolutely beyond me, the ramifications, and yes, the morale of the police departments now that are having to contend with this. Now, here's the other thing. Dylan Bryan Adams, so he won't go down as a felon. I mean, that's assuming he was also convicted, right? And I'm just doing a quick search, but I'm not seeing anything that suggests he actually has been fired yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
So he'll probably
either.
keep his job, too. It really does seem it's like different rule sets these days. Now, the shocking thing is he seems to be a white, straight male. So that is a little shocking to me. Usually they do throw those people in the but he was down for the cause, scratching Tesla. So I guess that's his saving grace, playing those identity politics. By the way, my black joke just fell so flat with Twila. I was like, oh my God, did I not say it right?
But
that is the thing about, like, the left goes, we can't have voter ID because black people can't, or essentially black people can't get IDs. So this is like against minority rights, right? And it's like, but then they can't fly as well, right? If they can't get IDs, but somehow it doesn't apply to that, which just shows you their whole logic's bullshit.
Yeah, Carlin Nelson asks, did he write Nazi on the cars? And I don't think it's been released what he put on the cars, but something else that I'm seeing here, Minnesota's DHS told the Daily Mail that they're reviewing Adams's case, and when asked if he would keep his job, added, quote, state employees are expected to follow our code of conduct and hold themselves to the highest ethical standards throughout their words and actions. So I guess we have to wait and see. Hopefully he is held accountable for this thing, because obviously Moriarty is not willing to.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, Becky X says the dude needs mental health. Clearly, right? All right, let's go to the post show. I got a couple things I want to talk about with the Real ID fight, some other inside info I think you guys will find very interesting, and whatever else is new behind the scenes in Minnesota politics. We couldn't do this show with our great sponsors today, Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give my good friend Warren a call at 612-419-7453. And if you're buying a home, go to the good guys at John Galt Mortgage Company. Go to the good guys. That's kind of an alliteration, isn't it? Go to the good guys. Go to the good folks at John Galt Mortgage Company. Yeah, it's too many G's. You can go to johngaltmortgage.com and also check out Alpine Cabinetry in the great city of St. Cloud, Minnesota. Thank you to Rumble Rants. O'Bannon, I think, had a couple, and Gunner had one on there. I think I've got them all. I think there's 3. Thank you to our premium subscribers. If you're not a premium subscriber, which gives you access to the post show and other things, some of the most, if you really want the behind the scenes and the rumors of what's going on in Minnesota politics, you could be a premium subscriber. Jesse, who's an operative, I'm a retired operative, I guess, still making my way around the political world. We'll give you insight into what's going on in the political world. Plus, you get to be part of our post show. Go to truthhurtsnews.com, click on support us on the top, or if you're on Rumble, you could just click on join on the top of that page. For those of you that also are Action for Liberty Founders Club members, hope to see you guys tonight at the Founders Club Social, where Jesse and I both will be speaking, which will be a lot of fun. That's a cool club. And Patty's Great Spaghetti. I don't know if you've tried it before. It's out of this world.
I haven't tried it.
Family recipe.
Is she bringing bread too?
I would imagine so. But
nice.
Even if she doesn't, I don't care.
I love bread.
Spaghetti's good enough. I'll tell you that. All right. Anyhow, we'll be on the post show in 1 minute. For everyone else, we'll be back here